I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Duluth Mayor Don Ness unveiled his preliminary budget to the City Council this week, 2 months earlier than usual. A lower tax levy is in the offing, but questions remain about road repairs.
100 years ago, the first airplanes flew in the Twin Ports. Next week, a new festival will commemorate a century of aviation in Duluth.
And our news file story from 25 years ago recalls Duluth's most explosive fireworks display.
These stories and more coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. This week's show was recorded on Wednesday due to the 4th of July holiday. And now here's Denny to introduce our first discussion.
All right, thank you very much, Julie, and a happy extended 4th of July weekend. Well, at a meeting Monday, Mayor Don Ness presented a preliminary 2014 budget to the Duluth City Council. That's a full 2 months earlier than usual. The mayor's 2014 proposal calls for no increase in city property taxes. But some councilors were disappointed that the mayor's budget allocated no additional funding for street repairs. A task force studying the street problem may come up with its own plan, with the funding mechanism to be decided. Well, joining us now to talk about the budget and a lot more is Mayor Don Ness, the mayor of the city of Duluth. Mayor, thank you very much for being here. No increase proposed in property taxes. How did you and the administration accomplish that?
Well, in large part, it's because of the additional support from the state of Minnesota in the form of local government aid. We had a $1.6 million increase in local government aid, which doesn't quite get us back to where we were 5 years ago, but it certainly helps a great deal to cover the increased costs in inflation and health care.
There are those, Mayor, that argue that a city the size of Duluth shouldn't have to depend so heavily on local government aid, that the city should be able to generate its own funding for services. What do you say to those folks? Why is it so critical to get that money into our community?
Well, it's an important program across the state of Minnesota, and essentially it says this. It's a property tax relief program for communities that have a great deal of need, but not the property tax base to support that need. And so, Edina has a very large property tax base and lower expenses, and so they may not need the aid, whereas the city of Duluth, if we took the $29 million that we collect in local government aid and had to collect those same dollars through the property taxes for city services, people's property taxes would actually have to triple in order to come up with that same amount of money. And we know how difficult it is, property taxes are for people right now. So this is it's a critical program for communities like Duluth, and it allows for people to choose the city that they want to live in, have quality services, and not be taxed out of their home.
The city has lost $6 million a year, Mayor, in the brouhaha with the casino over lost revenues coming in. You too must know that there certainly are some bad roads in the city of Duluth.
Oh, absolutely. It's the most pressing issue facing our community, and we are still working through the courts to protect our position within that contract, and it's not over yet. And so we still feel like we have a strong case to be made, and that some revenue sharing needs to come out of this agreement going forward. I also believe that the state of Minnesota should allow regional centers like Duluth to apply a 1 or 2 cent gas tax per gallon to allow for a local source of revenue to fix our local roads. The roads that people drive on a daily basis aren't the freeways and the highways. They're local roads, they're city roads, and so having that revenue source would allow us a source that's not on the property tax.
So what's being done for road repair right now with that lost revenue?
Well, what we're focused on right now is maintenance and maintaining our roads, focusing on crack sealing and capping and doing a good job with our potholes. We have an enhanced pothole program in place right now, in large part because of the flood and because we had the never-ending winter that really put us behind, and it took a serious toll on our streets.
Is it worth it to hold the line on property taxes when the roads are in such critical condition? Because your budget doesn't really call for any additional money going in that direction, or a pothole prevention plan or maintenance plan.
Yeah, well, I think it is important that we try to hold the line on property taxes, especially in light of the fact that the state of Minnesota did come up with additional support, in part to keep property taxes from raising in the future. So it is a tricky balance there, and this is the start of the conversation. We present our balanced budget with a 0% tax increase, and we feel that that's the right path to go on. But we'll have a discussion with the council about how we address all the other needs within our community.
And with you, go ahead.
As you look at the council, do you think that the budget that ultimately comes out of this process is going to be far different from the one that you're proposing today, or do you think there'll be a lot of changes, pushback?
Well, we are starting this much sooner than we normally do, and so it's more of a framework at this point. And in order to engage the council and get their feedback, get their opinions on what priorities they would like to see reflected in the budget, and then I'll be presenting a more fleshed out budget at the end of August. And I think that the framework that we have is a good one, and the end budget will look much like that, but there's likely going to be changes.
Mayor, in your proposed budget, will there be pay raises for city employees?
Yes, there will, and that's from collective bargaining agreements that were recently passed. City employees have gone 2 years, in some cases with AFSCME, 3 years without a pay increase, and we appreciate their contributions to allow us to get out of some really dire budget times. And so with this budget, there is a 2% pay increase for 2014. But again, when you consider that in AFSCME's case, they've gone 3 years without a raise, that 2% I think is fair.
And there will still need to be cuts by department heads. You're asking for what, a combined $600,000?
$600,000 from across all departments to contribute. And again, people say, well, boy, you have $1.6 million of increased LGA, and you're asking department heads to create find $600,000 of cuts. Why? Those two things don't add up. But we had $2.6 million of increases in our costs, particularly in the healthcare and retiree healthcare.
What kind of monies are tourists bringing in this year?
Well, the tourism season is off to a great start. Even in spite of the fact that we had this terrible weather during the spring, we're still ahead of schedule of last year, which was a record year. And with tall ships and some of the events going on this year, I think it'll be another record season.
Let's talk about term limits. Former Duluth Police Chief Eli Militich has suggested that there be a change in the city charter to limit the number of terms that a mayor can have. What do you think? Is that a topic that's worth discussion? There are those who say that Don Ness has the job as long as he wants it at this point.
No, I think it's a reasonable discussion to have, and it's a good public policy discussion. My issue with it is how it has been brought forward. There's a vote next week by the Charter Commission on this proposal brought forth by Eli Militich, and there has been no community discussion. If we had a citizen commission that was looking at elections and came up with this recommendation and will engage the community in debate, absolutely, that's a good discussion to have. But this, I think, was politically motivated. He's upset with me because of the actions that we took to address retiree health care, and this is kind of a way for him to kind of stick it to me a little bit.
So it was sour grapes on Militich's part?
Yeah, I think he has an axe to grind, and he's using his position on the Charter Commission to try to send a message. And unfortunately, it's using what should be seen as a very serious public policy discussion and debate, but there hasn't been any engagement with the public whatsoever before bringing this to the Charter Commission for a vote.
And are you looking at another term or too early?
Oh, it's much too early. I haven't decided. I'm probably about 50-50 at this point. My term isn't up until the end of 2015, so we have plenty of time to think about it.
Secretary of State Lori Swanson was in town a couple of weeks ago to gather some input on the synthetic drug issue and the problems that we're having. Have you heard anything more from her office as far as what might come out of that meeting?
Well, first of all, we're very pleased that the Attorney General took the time to come up to the city of Duluth and to hear our concerns. And I think we did see kind of a change in her approach to this. We've seen more activity from her office down in St. Paul to engage other departments of state government. And so we're seeing increased participation from the state of Minnesota, which was our goal in inviting her to come up.
Mm-hmm. The business community has been concerned about the synthetic drug sales downtown. There are more and more letters to the editor that I see with people who are concerned about safety, security in downtown Duluth. What do you think the toll is on our community in real economic terms?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's devastating, and unfortunately, Jim Carlson is running his business and externalizing the costs of his business model onto other business owners and those that want to enjoy our downtown. And because it's in a very visible location in an area that has seen revitalization in recent years, it's setting us back from the progress that we want. You know, we have tourists and visitors that come up into the area because they want to visit Tycoons or Zeitgeist or the Sheraton, and then they see this, and they see this drug dealing, and they see, you know, his operation that has created a lot of police issues in our downtown. So it's heartbreaking. That's one of the reasons that this is our top priority in city government, and I do feel confident that he will be convicted on those federal counts and he will be shut down. Unfortunately, it just takes a very long time to get there.
Carlson has said if you drop all charges, I'll stop selling. You're not in favor of dropping all charges?
Absolutely not. And that's not the way our legal system works. You can't come in and say, listen, all I have to offer is to stop the pain that I'm creating to this community, and then you have to drop the criminal charges against me but I do think that is his acknowledgement that he is breaking the law, that he knows that he's going to be found guilty from these charges, and he knows that, again, the only thing that he has to offer is to stop the incredible pain and suffering that he's creating.
All right, Mayor Don Ness, thank you so very much for being with us.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
For the spectators, it was much like watching the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. At first, it did not sink in.
People were thinking, I think, along the lines of what I was thinking to begin with, is that it was the finale, but then all of a sudden it hit everybody because it was exploding behind the tent versus going up in the air and over the tent.
Miraculously, no one was injured.
They were experienced and smart enough to know that nothing could be done, so they kind of found nooks and crannies. And fortunately, the site has a lot of those down there, places to get behind, and some hid behind trailers. And so they all found a spot and came through it.
There was also remarkably little property damage.
There was some damage, very minimal, to, I noticed that the big flames were actually a styrofoam fire. The big fireball that was going on was just a pile of styrofoam.
Authorities are calling last night's explosion a fluke accident. A bad shell rolled under a fireproof tarp which covered the remaining explosives. This set off a chain reaction which could not be stopped. Arrowhead Fireworks of Duluth was the company responsible for putting on last night's display. This was its first shot at the Duluth account, and organizers say last night's fiasco does not necessarily mean it was their last. Julie Zenner, KDLH News.
In the summer of 1913, Duluthians were treated to a rare spectacle, a flying boat skimming the harbor and skies. The plane, named the Lark of Duluth, was the focus of a festival that ran 6 weekends in a row that summer. A century later, the Duluth Aviation Institute is recreating the Lark of the Lake Festival, July 12th through the 14th at Sky Harbor Airport. A full-scale replica of the Lark of Duluth, recently completed, will be flown at the Aviation Centennial Celebration. Joining us is Sandra Ettestad, founder and president of the Duluth Aviation Institute. Tom Betts is part of the team that built the replica of the Lark of Duluth, and John Eagleton is a trustee of the Duluth Aviation Institute and member of the Festival Steering Committee. And thanks to all of you for being here. Appreciate it. Sandra, this is exciting. A lot of time and preparation has gone into planning this festival. How did it all start coming together?
Well, it's been 5 years. It started with the mission of the Institute, which is to preserve our aviation history and to educate our community with that history. And this is our public, stage here at the Lark of the Lake Festival, where we show for the last 3 years our replica that we've been building to share with our community. And it is a boat that belongs to our community, a flying boat that belongs to all of us.
And Tom, the Lark of Duluth was recently certified. Now,
Yes.
what is the certification process? Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, once we've completed the airplane and have it all together as we see it and have inspected it ourselves, we invite the FAA and
The feds need to come into the
they
picture.
They need to come in and say, yes, this is airworthy, and we're duplicating standards they used back then. So it's and
We're
in
looking
the
at some
picture
video
we're-
now. This is the
yeah.
propeller being
This is the propeller that
installed.
was copied from a Benoit propeller in the Museum of Aviation in Florida.
You mentioned Benoit, Tom. Was he the original designer of this aircraft?
Tom Benoit had an airplane factory in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh.
And this was his 43rd airplane. It's a Model 14 Benoit, 2-seat. It carried 1 pilot and 1 passenger, just like all of our early transportation. They start out small.
And let's get into that history a little bit. I just want to back up because a lot of viewers might not be familiar with the Lark of Duluth and its real place in aviation history. And Sandra, if you could talk about that and why it's important for Duluth to celebrate that place in our nation's aviation history.
Well, it is a wonderful, wonderful story. The Duluth Boat Club is that Julius Barnes initiated this. He was a visionary, and he brought this idea of aviation to our city and said, let's have a celebration. Let's look at this plane. Let's look at this new industry. And so he created the Lark of the Lake Festival to showcase the Lark of Duluth. And this being a flying boat and us being a city with water, and there were no airports at the time. So our runway was the bay. And we are a water city anyway. And so it's a perfect symbol of aviation for our city.
And John, the Lark of Duluth was actually the first airliner in the country.
Absolutely. It once fall came in the year 1913 and no longer could probably be flying the boat off the water very long. Julius Barnes loaned the plane to a friend in St. Petersburg, Florida, and that person flew about 800 people between Tampa, St. Petersburg, one at a time. The mayor of St. Petersburg wanted to be the first passenger when the plane arrived, and I understand he paid $500 to be the first passenger.
Handsome sum at the time.
The other passengers paid $5.
Oh my.
Tom, what are some of the challenges that you faced in trying to create this replica? Were there photos or news stories or historic records
we've
to
been
follow?
asked that often.
You didn't have a schematic.
No, there are no plans to it. And Sandra and Mark, early on, they went to the Smithsonian and other museums and gathered information from other aircraft from the era. And then there's a replica of it in Florida that was made for the 70th anniversary. And so we had these clues, and then we had high definition pictures from the Smithsonian, our high definition pictures of their photos to use, and then lots of there were documents and brochures, but there were no plans. So we kid about, this. It's been such a retrieval process. It's we say we built it from pictures and rumors.
Did you build it out of the same materials that were used back then?
Yes, we did. Well, the fabrics are more modern. The fabrics they used in those days would be gone in a year in the sun. So we're using fabrics that, covering fabrics that will last forever. But the wood underneath the airplane skin is all stick-to spruce, and that's what they use.
This is a
back
pusher
then.
prop, it looks like. Pusher engine?
Yeah, it's a pusher. That's an 8.5-foot prop. Weighs about 18 pounds. It's very light. And here we're starting it on the water in the picture. And
what kind of a useful load would the plane have with full fuel? Any idea?
Yeah, one pilot and one passenger.
Okay, about 400 pounds?
Yeah, about 400.
About 400?
Yeah. The replicas in the past, they've had lots of trouble flying them, and Mark has done a lot to keep the weight down on it without compromising it at all. It's just been a wonderful project. The materials arrived, the main materials arrived in 2 stacks of 2x10 wood, about 12 inches high, a little higher maybe, and we cut all the lumber, all the materials out of that wood to build the airplane.
John, you're one of the owners of North Star Aerospace.
Yes.
Was your company at all involved in some of the construction or design of maybe some improvements on this plane or changes made on this plane?
No, we were not involved because North Star Aerospace is a high volume precision manufacturing, and most of this is prototype one part to be made, and it wasn't a project that North Star could participate.
But you've served on the board here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been on the board several years, and most in a supportive role in planning. But many local companies have participated in helping the builders to make the parts necessary out of aluminum or steel, mostly.
2 years ago, I got the delight of being able to see the aircraft in very rudimentary stages, but it was wheeled out of the hangar on Park Point, and I got a chance to look it over. Boy, you've come a long way in 2 years.
Yeah, we're very proud of it.
Watching the video, it was skimming along the water. Have you actually gotten it up in the air yet?
Well, 2 witnesses say they saw air under it, but there was no intention to do that, and it wasn't at full power. But it gave us great hope that it will fly, which has always been a concern because the previous replica didn't fly.
Okay, Duluth's version of the spruce goose.
Yeah, I shouldn't say it didn't fly, but it flew with one person, and it flew poorly, and we know that we've accurately built a replica of a very unreliable aircraft. And guess what?
It's unreliable.
It's unreliable.
So when and where will the festival be held? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Festival is a wonderful celebration at our most beautiful airport sky harbor, right there on the water. You've got the Lake Superior with the dunes, and you've got the bay right there, and it's a great setting for a festival, so we invite everybody to come down. Now, the festival is also a period festival, so we're going to be kind of like the Downton Abbey of Duluth. We want you to come in kind of period clothing. If you have something in your closet, bring it out. Lots of parasols, and
hey, there you go.
Just fun.
Sure.
So we are going to have carriages, antique and vintage items at the festival. We have the Duluth Rowing Club is going to be very involved with it, Lake Superior Zoo, St. Louis County Historical Society, just great community partners, Children's Museum. So we want you to come down, be a part of the airport environment.
When the plane flies on that day, is it going to have one flight, more than one? What are you planning?
Well, okay, what we're planning is a good test program to make sure this thing's ready for flight. And while our goal has been to fly on that date, that's helped us push toward that date. It's questionable whether we'll be ready to do a good look and performance. We're not going to go out there and do something careless.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's ready, we'll go. And I'm sure you're going to see it on the water at least.
Yes.
Motoring around.
Maybe a foot in the air.
And
at
it's
least.
beautiful on the water. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
Ed Turner won't be present.
Final thoughts.
Well, we do want to mention that we have the International Air Show that we're going to with Oshkosh. We're going to showcase it for an entire week so the whole entire nation,
Sure,
aviation
at the convention
community.
there.
So we have to protect it a little bit because they want to see it too.
Wow.
And it's really an international stage for Duluth and our history.
What an event for this town, though. Wow.
Right, a great first century for aviation, and with all of the aviation-related business and industry, I'm sure the next century is going to be important here too. Thank you so much.
Time now for the week's economic news from the folks at Business North. Grand Rapids-based UPM Blend and Paper Company has filed in Minnesota tax court asking to reduce the value of about 187,000 acres of its forest land. The property, situated on parcels in 4 northern Minnesota counties, was placed in a permanent conservation easement during 2010. UPM's Blend and Paper Mill was paid $47 million to prevent the land from being sold in fragments. At issue now is whether the land should be valued as a single economic unit, which would reduce its tax obligations to the counties, or as smaller units. The case will go to trial late in September.
Essentia Health this week began phasing out sugar-sweetened drinks on its downtown Duluth and Superior campuses. It joins other systems in the region and nationwide making the change. Dietitians say such drinks are little more than a source of calories, having no nutritional value. The ban affects cafeterias, coffee shops, gift shops, and vending machines. In some cases, sugar-sweetened beverages will be available to patients by request if they are not prohibited by the patient's dietary restrictions.
2 independent clinic systems in northwestern Wisconsin have merged. Lakes Community Health Center and Northwoods Community Health Center have combined their resources. The record level of complexity evolving as new government reimbursement plans emerge was a driving factor in the merger, according to the group's CEO, Reba Rice. The combined organization offers greater operational synergies, and it has added more services and facilities in northwest Wisconsin. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
And if you have a comment, now is the time to call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. You can also surf to the WDSE website for program updates, news about the stations, or watch archived video of your favorite public television programs. And Denny, it seems like the weather will be perfect for all of those weekend-long Independence Day celebrations.
And wow, we've had one tremendous week leading up to this weekend, so let's hope it continues.
It has been a great one.
Yeah.
Lots for people to do, so get out and enjoy it. For Denny and all of us here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend.